Hello, and thank you for attending Miro Consulting's webinar on IBM Q&A, questions and answers. We'll be beginning in just a moment. We're just going to give everyone a chance to log in. Thank you for your patience. Hello, and thank you for joining us. We'll be beginning the presentation in just a moment. We're just going to give everyone a chance to log in. Thanks. Hello, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to Miro Consulting's webinar on IBM with questions and answers. My name is Sean Donahue, and I'm the VP of Marketing here at Miro Consulting. Joining me today is Miro Senior Analyst, Sharon Trembley. If you have any questions during the broadcast, please use the question box in your webinar control panel, and we'll answer them at the end of the session. And I just want to say, since we had a large number of people who registered for this event, and we want to prioritize questions of those who are in attendance, if you're live with us right now, please type your question into the question box in the webinar control panel, and we'll make sure that we answer those during the presentation. And if we don't get to you, we'll reach out to you individually after the event. Before we begin, I'd just like to briefly explain who Miro is. We specialize in license management, software audit advisory, cloud migrations, contract negotiations, and subscription management for Oracle, Microsoft, IBM, and Adobe. Since 2000, Miro has helped hundreds of clients worldwide to optimize their total cost of ownership and has overseen over 1.5 billion in licensing transactions. And just a quick note, all of the questions will be kept strictly confidential to us, the webinar, to us here at Miro, and they won't be visible to other participants. And with that, let's get started with our presentation. Sharon, please take it away.
Thanks, Sean. The first question is a big question about Red Hat. Now that IBM owns Red Hat, what changes are they going to make to licensing? And it's a good question because this is a huge deal. Well, it's the largest software acquisition in history. I think the deal itself is still in the intent phase. It's not staged, it's not finished yet. But and I do hear people kidding that it's a mistake because IBM bought software that they could get for free. But if you look at Red Hat's products, it's OpenShift Container Platform, JBoss Enterprise Application Platform, the middleware, and of course Linux, the Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Red Hat's business model is based on support and training rather than selling licenses. And IBM did say the acquisition was about cloud. I don't think there's a reason to second guess that. We all know that IBM has cloud and acquired SoftLayer and Bluemix, so OpenShift will fit in with that strategy. OpenShift is private platform as a service, the containers. And there's some different flavors of it. The container platform with Origin, that's the open source application container platform, which I think you can get as part of the Apache license even. And there's OpenShift Online, which can run on AWS. There's a lot of about public cloud, but private and hybrid cloud are important options for enterprises. And if you also look at Red Hat's partnerships, they've already partnered with AWS, Azure, and Google. So that could give IBM a piece of the pie for a lot of cloud deployments. And don't forget, IBM security products could work into this space too. Once they, start selling, discussing Red Hat, then you could talk about other products that might work well with cloud or for whatever transactions you're doing. IBM's more about the business to business rather than the open web. And IBM has a long history of acquisition. Lotus, Tivoli, Guardium, Cognos. It might take time before they blue wash in a product, and so they do it differently. So I'm not sure what they would do with Red Hat, but with all of these acquisitions that IBM does, you need to pay attention to the migration when that happens. And you should always do that. License migrations are not always just a name change. They happen frequently with IBM software, and there's also licensing changes between versions, so you should keep double checking on that. You can set up even a schedule to check Passport Advantage every quarter as part of your SAM process. And if something's amiss, don't wait to raise the flag and discuss it with IBM. I've heard some odd statements about products such as Cognos. Yeah, I originally bought it from Cognos and IBM migrated it, but I didn't agree. So now I'm getting audited. But in all those years in between, did you ever talk to IBM about it? You don't wait until there's an audit 8 years later. And what was the issue? Was it their initial acquisition of Cognos or the 2014 license simplification? And since I've seen both, the 2014 migration really did simplify things. It didn't make it more complex. So it wasn't just IBM presenting a lot of words and flashy slides. And I also saw recently something that might have tipped IBM's hand regarding their Red Hat deal or their announcement, because usually IBM doesn't comment on what others are doing. But if you recall Oracle's announcement regarding Java, that kind of poked IBM to make their own announcement in April. This was before anybody knew that they had Red Hat in their sites. They had said that IBM will partner with members of the OpenJDK community to continue to update OpenJDK Java 8 with security patches and critical bug fixes. They added to it on November 1st regarding support. I found IBM stating that their commitment to OpenJDK to be a big deal. This doesn't solve the problem for those that are running Oracle Java, but it does solidify an alternative and their position on open source. So maybe Red Hat is not going to be as terrible as people fear. Okay, the next question is on ILMT Discovery. What if I install ILMT, which is IBM's license metric tool, and the tool finds IBM software I didn't know about? And that's another good question for our webinar. I'm going to assume that the output you got, the report from ILMT, you're going to compare that to what's on the server. That's step one, is it reporting correctly? Because there's some steps in setting up ILMT that might have gone awry, and it may misreport products if the settings aren't correct. Especially if the bundling gets hosed up, it might report everything it recognized until the admin updates it, links them all together. So if you found something unexpected, let's break down your possible reasons. I mean, one of the simplest ones is, did IBM change the name of the software? Name changes happen a lot, and it might be reporting a name that's not familiar to you. Kind of like when Tivoli became Spectrum, that most people still call it, Tivoli Storage Manager instead of Spectrum. So that's, a possibility. Another possibility is software left over that was not deinstalled properly. You could have a leftover instance, a proof of concept. There might be a partial directory still there. So on the ILMT report, if you're looking at the PVUs for subcapacity or full capacity, way over on the right, there's a field that'll have the directory path that says this is what ILMT is saying is the install that's causing this find. And there's another reason that I was reminded of recently, is it could be pre-installed software that was ordered as part of the hardware as a service code, because there was some WAS Express on an iSeries server. But that when we dug into why is ILMT suddenly reporting WAS Express there, it was procured. The iSeries administrator was able to show us that he had gotten it as part of the hardware service code for that AS400 when it was bought. So ILMT won't know the difference between how you ordered it or what you own, or even different metrics. So you have to go into ILMT when you find an instance like this, and you can exclude it. And then when you put the reason in to exclude it, to zero it out, put like a real reason in. Just don't say ILMT is wrong, because this could be used for an audit later. So you want a real reason in there, not just something that seems flippant that's not going to help you during later when somebody else is trying to put together the picture again. So basically what can you do besides excluding everything and making, you could exclude everything and just make it a big mess, but you want to determine if you're using that software. And if it's in use, you should acquire licenses. If you are only governed by IBM's Passport Advantage Agreement, you should buy sufficient licenses before deploying IBM software. Once it's installed and you're using it, the best you can do is buy licenses as soon as you can. If you're not using it, deinstall it and review your internal processes to make sure they're sufficient to prevent this from occurring again, because you don't want this to keep happening. If you made use of it prior to deinstalling beyond a proof of concept, you probably should have bought the licenses to cover the use. I mean, that's only fair. Okay, other discovery. How would you look for other IBM software software installs that might be overlooked by ILMT? ILMT only has limited function, so this is also another good thing to bring up. ILMT agents need to be installed on the servers. They're not going to report anything if they're not installed. And they report back to the data collection server, or you need to get that information from the agents to that server to complete a report. And it's only going to report PVUs and possibly resource value units, RVUs, if the resource is like managed cores or something else that's hardware-based that the server agent can report on. So if you've done a good job getting the agents out there and get your quarterly report going, that will leave you with everything that's not licensed by PVUs. It's likely you own the licenses for products you're using. You're not, if you don't rampantly, install trial versions and download, just keep downloading things and, trying it out. You can export, the list of what you own and what's on support from Passport Advantage, IBM's system. And if it's still on support, someone may have approved it. Track them down. You might have to be persistent. You may even have to adopt IBM's point of view in order to ask the right questions. As you're tracking people down for, who's keeping it on support. And let's say, there's supports being generated by a program like Cognos that's licensed by users. If you have another application using a service account to access that, and it's putting the images or the reports in a repository, you want to try to find those users on the front end. Just don't accept, oh, it's only a service account, don't worry about it, because it gets, it's IBM's intellectual property. That's where you take their point of view to say, of course I need a license. How do we count these users? So you might have to do some work internally to educate people on the software metrics. Okay, the next question is there an easy set of steps to follow for audit compliance? Complying with the software licensing rules should lead to good results with an audit. IBM software reviews give you time to gather the data, and both their auditing firms act professionally and are tremendously helpful in giving instructions to gather data and review their findings before you negotiate with IBM. With specific software asset management, not just running a tool that may or may not know everything, you need a human element with the understanding of the licensing rules to attain a high degree of confidence there. There may be some frustration when an auditor doesn't understand what you present, and you may have to wait until the settlement phase to present the same documents or facts to IBM. So there's still going to be things IBM just won't go for, like my earlier example of the service account being counted as one user of an IBM product, and you don't have any licenses. We had a lot of ILMT questions. How to handle false positives from ILMT. And that, the tough part's already done there. You've discovered it. And you can call IBM support for ILMT because it's, the tool is free, the support is free. You can call them. Can you articulate the problem for them, for IBM support, and call them and see if they offer a fix? Sometimes they can't fix it, but at least you can document things. Don't just make a single call and ignore the problem from that point forward. You got to exercise some responsibility here. In the ILMT report, you can add an exclusion or suppression with a reason. If you add a reason, it helps track it back to the point of discovery. IBM's auditor will see it too in the audit trail reports if you undergo an audit. So please make it something better than ILMT is wrong. It's about workstations. What are the standard misses when scanning for IBM software on workstations? And with workstations, I'm usually thinking user licenses, and you could use Big Fix Inventory, which is an IBM product, but it depends on what type of software we're talking about. Like Rational has the floating or concurrent users, so you need to look in the license key server to check that it's limiting usage to the number of licenses you currently have on support. That's one that, as you use less of Rational and drop some off support, you have to make sure you take the extra keys out, or else you still continue to allow extra people to use it. And there's like Domino, where the licensing is not based on the number of workstations, but the number of users in the directory. And with Domino Enterprise Edition, you also need to look at the server PVUs. It's licensing both. And you also have to consider, do you have users accessing your Domino application through the web? That requires Domino utility PVUs. And then Cognos has its own world of licensing, so it's not a workstation equals a users. It's based on what roles the users have within Cognos. And SAM tools have a challenge because of IBM's name changes. So the install could be an old product name. So don't forget that there may be some workstations too that might have multiple versions on them. So only count a workstation once. And we could go back to the idea of misses with ILMT for this too. I think the best way to catch those would be to approach it from both directions. What do I own, but I'm not finding with the scans? The first time, don't assume everyone stopped using it and properly deinstalled it. Do some more investigating. And then the second way, you could, what have I found but doesn't have a matching license? And the severity of this may be based on who made the tool. Like Microsoft's SCCM finds IBM software, but it isn't perfect on naming it what you found. So you might need to do some more investigation to match it up to the right license. Okay, if you have a secure environment and you're thinking, what if I can't run ILMT because I have a secure environment? Will that be a compliance issue? The simplest answer is no, it's not a compliance issue, because if you look at the IBM Passport Advantage Agreement, by default, everybody is full capacity when counting their server-based hardware, software on servers, PVUs and RVUs. Everybody's full capacity. If you want to be subcapacity, you have to run ILMT. You can still use IBM software at full capacity, but you need to, it'll be the full capacity of the physical host if you're using virtualization. That's where it's going to be a lot of licenses as compared to the subcapacity. But once you've made the decision to remain at full capacity, you can plan your licensing around it, right? I've seen it with P-Series servers all the time. More in the past than currently, but yet you purposely keep the partitions running the same software together on the same set of physical servers to reduce the hardware footprint and the licenses needed. And you can, but if you want to be subcapacity, you can either set up a pipe to tunnel in the information from the agents outside the firewall, or you can, I think there's an option to collect it in a zip file and then load it into the ILMT data collection server, just so you can get those numbers. Or you just count those as full capacity and everybody on ILMT as subcapacity. There's different variations you can do to get the best, what will fit your environment.
All right, thanks, Sharon. We have one additional question from the audience, and that is, what can you do when ILMT identifies the software correctly, but it assigns the wrong metric, and it doesn't give you an option to reassign, in this case, PVU software identified as other.
Okay. I've seen a couple variations of this. You can leave the erroneous one in there and make either exclude it with a note, or know that the wrong, after a couple calls to the help desking, probably maybe not getting anywhere. Just make note of it that you've checked into it and you have the PRM number and what the instructions were and how they, it fails to help. I've seen it sometimes where it does something with the virtualization, miscounts the socket. So if it's an Intel box, it's 120 instead of 70 PVUs per core. With this, I've also seen, I think DB2 Advanced, you can license it by terabytes. So it's ILMT is going to report PVUs. And Urban Code, I think, also has shown up on some of my reports that they weren't licensing it by PVUs. But, you're kind of limited by what ILMT will allow you to reassign it or bundle it into. Because that's sometimes an issue too, where I see it reporting everything under the sun on one server, but it's actually all part of one parent, and it's reporting all the children instead. So it's updating ILMT, the reporting, just so there's at least a note or something to remind you in case somebody wins the lottery and leaves the company, and you then have an audit and you're unsure of what's going on. So that this will help trace it back. But sometimes fixing ILMT needs some extra work, and I see it a lot, especially when it gets to the stage of an audit. They'll have evidence that they've tried to fix it over years, and one of the benefits of the audit is usually the auditor will hook them up with an IBM ILMT subject matter expert that will finally fix this issue after all this time, and they won't conclude the audit until it's fixed. So actually you get a benefit out of an audit there. Finally, it's working.
Thanks, Sharon. That's great. And I just want to get back to one of your earlier questions that was, is there an easy set of steps toward compliance? And I can tell you the easiest set of steps you can have toward compliance is simply call us here at Miro. If you contact us, we can help you with all the steps necessary, and that includes negotiating your next IBM renewal or contract, negotiating with your new Red Hat systems if IBM finishes the purchase, and negotiate with any sort, and help you with any sort of audit defense around IBM. But of course, the best strategy is always be compliant before you get that audit letter. So we can help you with all those things, and that's the easy way to do it. Otherwise, we don't have any more questions from the audience. I'd like to thank Sharon for spending some time helping answering some questions. And again, if you have any further details you might need or follow-up questions, please contact us at info@miroconsulting.com. Thank you very much, and have a great day.